The next thing that we're going to do is explore groups of data, and this time we're going to use a file called SPSS exam.sav. So I'm going to go to File again. I'm going to go to Open Data, the folder where the data are kept, and I'm going to open SPSS exam.sav, and the data are opening as you can see here. We'll just switch over to the variable view, and we can see that there are a few variables called exam, computers, lectures, numeracy, and uni. And the labels tell us what these variables are: percentage on SPSS exam, computer literacy, percentage of lectures, and so on. We can also see in the variable called uni that if we hover over the values and then click on the three dots, we can see that there are two values, one for Dunstown University and one for Sussex University. So the first thing that we're going to do is just look at the frequencies of these data. As we've done before, we're going to go to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, Frequencies. We're going to take the data for these variables, not for uni because that's just a categorical variable. And we're just going to look at the charts of the data this time. We're going to look at histogram, and you can see that it opens up this window here showing normal curve and histogram. That's useful because we can see whether the data are normally distributed or not. So I'm just going to click and continue here. I'm going to say, okay, I don't want to see the frequency tables, I just want to see the charts, so that's okay. And the window will open in a minute, and it shows the data for the 4 different variables. We can see the data for computer literacy. We can see the data for SPSS exam, percentage of lectures attended, and numeracy. And one of the things that we can see here is the comparison between the data and whether it's normally distributed or not. And one of the key measures is a measure of skewness. And in the accompanying handbook, I talk a little bit and show some examples about whether the data is skewed. Just one example that's worth noting here is that if we look at the percentage on SPSS exam, it looks like there's a group of scores over to the left with relatively low scores and a group of scores over to the right. So what we're seeing here is that the data doesn't look to be normally distributed at first glance. So that's something that we're going to explore in more detail. So having looked at the data and graphs, we'll just go back and look at the frequencies in numerical form. So we'll go Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, Frequencies. Yes, we want to see these variables. This time we don't want to see the charts. So we'll just click on none for that. But we do want to see statistics, and we want to see the mean, the median, and modes. We really want to look at measures of central tendency. I also want to look at the skewedness of the data. So that's fine. We'll say continue to that. And now we get a table that looks like this. So again, sometimes students ask me about how this differs from Excel. You can see that there's a lot more options in this. It's a lot more easy to summarize data, especially when you have lots of variables. So if we look at this table here, we can see the variables, and it's showing us the labels that we talked about. Remember, right at the start, I talked about having both the variable names and the labels. Here we can see the names and the labels. And I just want to draw your attention to one point, which was when we looked at the percentage on the SPSS exam, it looked as if there were sort of two distributions. And in fact, the table alerts us to this fact because although it tells us that the most common value was 72, which is the mode, it also tells us that there are multiple modes. So it's alerting us to the fact that there may be multiple distributions of data that are worth looking at. So if we suspect that the data are actually coming from two distributions, we might want to look at the variable that's causing that in a little more detail. And in this case, it's the variable university. So how can we do that? There are a few ways of doing that. The simplest way is just to look at the two groups separately. And one way to do that is to use the split file command. So I've gone onto the data tab at the top. I'm going down to split file. I've already put uni in before. I'm just going to put that back here. Actually, so you can see I've selected from the three options I want to organize output by groups, and I've selected uni from the left. Let's put that back, and I'm going to put it back in here. Okay, so that's fine. I'm going to say okay for that. Now everything that we do will be split by the variable uni until we switch that back off again. So I'm going to go to Analyze, Descriptive Statistics, Frequencies. I'm just going to put these back just because I've already tested this out. So we can see the 5 variables. The ones that I want to look at particularly are exam and numeracy. Statistics, I want to see the mean, the median, the mode, and the standard deviation. That's fine. I don't need to see the frequency table, so I'll just say OK to that. It will run, and here we can see the output file. And we can see that here we can see, first of all, the data for Dunstown. Here we can see the data for Sussex. So that split file command has split everything. And we can see that for percentage on the SPSS exam, those in Dunstown got an average of 40. Those in Sussex got an average of 76. And for numeracy, we can see that the score is 4.1 for Dunstown, 5.58 for Sussex. So again, a significant difference between the two universities. So from these tables, it's clear that Sussex students scored higher, both on the SPSS exam and numeracy. So that's one way of looking at the data. And when you've finished looking at the data using the split file command, you can go back into data, go back into the split files command, and just go back into analyze all cases, and that will have the effect of switching off the split file command. Quite often we're interested in the difference between two groups, for example, people who have had a drug, people who have not had a drug, and we want to look at some outcome. So this is an example where we're looking at two groups of people, and we're going to look at the difference between males and females, and we're going to use a new data file. So we're going to go to the data, open the file. The file is called filmenjoy.sav. We will open that data. And again, this is explained in the workbook in more detail, but basically what we have is a film, two different films, Bridget Jones's Diary and Memento, and we want to see whether males and females react differently to watching the film. So a researcher has a measure of physiological arousal, the variable is called enjoyment, and we're going to see if there's a difference between the two genders. So we switch over briefly to data view, and I've got the labels on. We can see we've got males. Some males watch Bridget Jones's Diary, some males watch Memento, similarly with the females, and all of them have a measure in this column of physiological arousal. So that's the data that we're going to be looking at. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the different means by using one of the graphing methods. So we'll click on Graph, Chart Builder, we're going to click on bars, and you see this one down here, it's got like a little line, simple error bar. So we're going to look at a simple error bar. The error bar is a measure of variance, which will tell us whether, and it's the same as the confidence interval that you'll often see reported in papers. So the thing that is doing the predicting is the film, so we'll drag that down here. And the thing that we're looking at, the dependent variable, is enjoyment. So we'll bring that on here. Everything else is okay, so we'll say okay, and we will see the graph appearing on the screen here. So we can see that Bridget Jones's diary has a lower level of enjoyment than Memento. The measures of variance look roughly similar, and you can see importantly that they don't overlap, which indicates that there's a significant difference between them. However, that wasn't the question that we were interested in. The question that we were interested in is there a difference in the way that males and females respond? So to do that, we're going to go back to the graphs chart builder. It always brings up an option that we've looked at before. This time we're just going to click on this one here, which you can see it's actually can't see the name of it, but you can see it's got two different colors representing groups. So it's kept all the other things, and we're going to cluster on the x-axis. So what that means is we're going to bring gender over here, and that's fine, and we'll say okay to that. And now we get a graph, and you can see we've got males and females. And the question was, do males and females differ in their response to the films? And you can see from this graph that the answer is not really. If we look at Memento, they're very similar. Males have a slightly higher score, but it's not going to be significantly different because the error bars overlap to a great extent. Even in the case of Bridget Jones's diary, where again males have a higher score, there's quite a degree of overlap. So what this slide shows is that there doesn't seem to be a difference between males and females. We can always go on later and check this by doing a statistical test, but it's always a good idea to look at the graphical data first.